As they start to worry about their midterm prospects, Republicans are turning to their favorite election year scare tactic by lying about immigration, highlighted by an especially cruel and sadistic stunt from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who claimed credit for his scheme to lie to a group of undocumented migrants and lure them onto a plane that then dropped them off on a remote island where they didn't know anyone. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. An ironclad rule of modern Republican politics in the Trump era is that in order to thrive within the party, you must have an unquenchable thirst for embarrassment. You have to be a glutton for shame. You have to be willing to debase yourself and endure any indignity or humiliation thrown your way by Donald Trump. That's the one thing his cult-like inner circle of criminal mutant gargoyles all have in common. There's just no amount of they won't eat just to get invited to Trump's haunted golf mansion for the honor of a photo op with a man whose thumbs up looks so unnatural you wouldn't be surprised if they had to lift it into position using an elaborate system of pulleys and levers. Is it time for the picture? Let's get cranking, Eric. Yes, Father, yes. Faster, Eric, I don't have all day. We're losing the light, Eric. Ted Cruz threw his own family under the bus for Trump. Matt Gaetz reportedly asked him for a pardon in a sex trafficking case. And Rudy Giuliani did a press conference outside a landscaping company near a crematorium and a sex shop. And you should have seen his face when he accidentally walked into the sex shop. Whoa, these are some very odd-looking microphones. Now, of course, we could have photoshopped this Rudy picture screaming into a dildo microphone, but it wasn't fair, so we didn't do it. I mean, you can picture what it would have looked like, but that's on you. We didn't do it. And now the most vivid example of humiliating obsequiousness to Trump is Ohio Senate candidate J.D. Vance, a Yale Law School graduate and Silicon Valley venture capitalist. Vance was once a relentless critic of Trump. He called himself a never Trump guy, said he couldn't stomach Trump, called Trump noxious and an idiot, even suggested Trump could be America's Hitler. Hell, Vance could have been one of my writers. In fact, he even came on this show and talked to me, a cosmopolitan coastal elite, no less, when he was hawking his book. And no one who has nice things to say about Donald Trump comes on this show. I mean, except for that one time we did day drinking with Mike Lindell. You know what's funny? Because his normal voice is drunk guy at a bar telling you how much he loves you, but his drunk voice, it's so weird, is British gentleman. I have proof that Hugo Chavez hacked the Dominion voting machines. Now, let's do some shots and head over to the Mankato Hardee's. But now Vance has cynically retracted everything he said about Trump to run for Senate, and Trump has repaid Vance's newfound loyalty by both endorsing him and also repeatedly humiliating him. At a rally a few months ago, Trump forgot Vance's name and then confused him with one of Vance's primary opponents, first calling him JP and then JD Mandel. And then over the weekend, Trump appeared at another rally with Vance and again took the opportunity to make Vance eat for his own entertainment.
The New York Times did a fake story today, big front page, that J.D. wasn't sure if he wanted my support. J.D. is kissing my ass. He wants my support. Yeah, he said some bad things about me, but that was before he knew me, and then he fell in love.
J.D. is a great guy. Great guy. Used to hate my guts, but then he realized he couldn't win without me, so he changed his tune. In order to court my voters, who he sees as gullible rubes. That's you. You're the rubes.
And it's not just Trump they've devoted themselves to, but Trumpism. For example, when Vance took the podium at this rally on Saturday and began to list the various problems he would address, as a senator from Ohio, the first thing he could apparently think of was actually 1,500 miles away from where he was speaking.
We have got some problems right now, ladies and gentlemen. We've got some problems on the southern border.
The southern border of Ohio? You guys have a lot of problems with refugees from Kentucky streaming across your border? You don't understand. That place is a dystopian hellhole. We live under the thumb of a ruthless dictator. He calls himself the Colonel. No one's number one problem is that far away, unless they're being catfished as part of a fake long-distance relationship. Yeah, I met this girl, Jessica, who lives in Vancouver. She's so great, but, you know, it has been a drain financially. I've been sending her money for surgery to have her Getty watermark removed. It's one thing to say we should fix the immigration system, but Republicans are singularly and obsessively focused on the border. For example, there's this anecdote from 2018 that I'll never forget when Trump was obsessively hyping up the so-called caravans of migrants supposedly headed for the border. And the New York Times reported that Trump's dystopian imagery has clearly left an impression with some, including a 75-year-old Republican in northern Minnesota, who said she was afraid that migrant gangs could take over people's summer lake homes in the state. What's to stop them? We have a lot of people who live on lakes in the summer and winter someplace else. When they come back in the spring, their house would be occupied. Yeah, I mean, what is to stop them? They could just waltz right over the border into El Paso, hop on a Greyhound bus, ride that for 3 days, break into a cabin on a frozen lake in northern Minnesota, and catch Viking fever. I'll see, if you live in Minnesota and leave your house unoccupied for the winter, you're much more likely to come back and find Mike Lindell living there. I mean, he needs a place to hibernate for the winter, just like, you know, the Bears. But that's how you know things are not going well for the GOP when they bust out the caravans and start hyperventilating about the border. That's a sure sign of their political fortunes in any poll. That's what Trump did in 2018. Didn't work. But now they're doubling down and trying it again. In fact, at that very same rally, Trump actually took credit for inventing the word caravan.
What's the problem, sir? I said, well, you won't take these horrible convicts and other people that you released into our country illegally, and you put them in caravans. I came up with that term, by the way. That was my term, like fake news and lots of other terms we came up with. Crooked Hillary, we came up with Crooked Hillary. We came up with a lot of terms.
He's like Billy Joel stopping in the middle of an MSG set and saying, you know, I came up with Piano Man, yeah. Before me, people had to say pianist, but nobody liked it because it reminded them of ding-dongs. Also, Italian restaurant. That was one of mine before. It was Ristorante. What do you guys want next? What do you guys want to hear next? Big Shot? I don't care. I get paid either way. The problem for Trump and his gang is that they've already tried this and failed. Everyone is onto them, which is now why they're trying to out-MAGA themselves with increasingly ghoulish and despicable acts of cruelty toward migrants fleeing poverty and violence, which brings us to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, you know, grown-up Nelson Muntz, and his grotesque scheme to apparently lure migrants from Texas onto a plane so he could drop them off on Martha's Vineyard without telling them or anyone else, a stunt designed entirely to curry favor with Fox News, who he apparently alerted beforehand. You see, they thought the people who live on Martha's Vineyard would freak out. Instead, residents and community organizations scrambled without any notice to provide aid and comfort to the migrants.
Tonight, the community of Martha's Vineyard coming together to provide food and shelter to 48 undocumented migrants, women, men, and children who landed on the wealthy island Wednesday. So this entire thing was funded by Florida. The flights were part of the state's program to transport undocumented migrants to so-called sanctuary cities. Now, earlier this year, Florida lawmakers, they did set aside $12 million for this transport program. Looks like they're starting to use it.
And that $12 million, I guess, is coming from the federal money that came in for coronavirus.
So congrats, Florida. You just spent a bunch of taxpayer money on a stupid and repulsive stunt that achieved nothing except maybe some publicity for Ron DeSantis' 2024 presidential bid. And worse than that, you gave the rich liberals who summer on Martha's Vineyard another thing to feel self-righteous about. When I heard those poor migrants had arrived, I put on my Birkenstocks and loaded my Tesla with sandwiches and pitched in. I'm not saying I'm better than you, I'm proving it. Also, not to let you chew inside on how summer vacations work, but most of the liberals you hate left the vineyard 2 weeks ago, and I should know, I'm one of them. That's right, I go to the vineyard. And you know where I was during President Obama's star-studded Martha's Vineyard birthday party last summer? Having dinner with my in-laws, because I wasn't invited. And not for lack of trying, it should be noted. But it's also important to make a distinction between the people who spend their summers on the island and people who live there year-round, like the hardworking staff at Martha's Vineyard Community Services who rose to the occasion with grace and empathy. Personally, I feel like DeSantis could have put the money he spent on this stunt to better use in Florida, like their local community service organizations, or I don't know, more traffic cops to chase down seniors doing 80 on the highway in their golf carts. Have you ever been down there? Those people drive their golf carts like they're Maseratis. One time, I pulled up to a light and an 85-year-old grandpa in golf khakis challenged me to a street race. Even their attempts to dunk on Massachusetts residents failed, like when Ted Cruz tweeted that, quote, Dems had activated the National Guard to interdict migrants in Massachusetts before it was pointed out to him that the governor of Massachusetts is a Republican named Charlie Baker, who called up the Guard to provide temporary shelter and humanitarian resources to the migrants on Joint Base Cape Cod. It was such an embarrassing mistake, Cruz had to delete the tweet, and then to make sure the tweet was fully deleted, he said he had to find the server where all the tweets are stored and go there in person to physically remove the disk from the hard drive. A hard drive he claimed was in Cancun? I don't know. It seems weird to me, but I mean, he's a senator. You gotta trust him. Now, on top of the many ways in which this stunt was ghoulish and cruel, NPR reported that the migrants were also apparently lured onto the plane under false pretenses and told they were headed to Boston where they would get expedited work papers, not to mention the fact that when they were dropped off on a remote island far away from their court appointments, where they don't know anyone, and an especially cruel twist, they were intentionally given only the most rudimentary information about where they were headed.
Accounts from the migrants who arrived last night make it clear that they were lied to again and again and fraudulently induced to board the planes. They were told there was a surprise present for them and that there would be jobs and housing awaiting for them when they arrived. This was obviously a sadistic lie. They also very intentionally chose not to call ahead to any single office authority on Martha's Vineyard so that even the most basic human needs arrangements could be made, ensuring that no help awaited the migrants at all was the entire point. They were provided with a cartoonishly simple map of Martha's Vineyard and the United States.
I dare you to give that map and nothing else to Donald Trump and let him find his way around Martha's Vineyard. I guarantee you he'd end up in Nantucket Sound within half an hour begging a dolphin to give him a ride to Mar-a-Lago.
Click, click, whistle, click, whistle. Excuse me, click, click. Excuse me, click. Click, whistle, whistle, click. Caravan, I came up with that one. Click, whistle.
The Republican Party is an institution built almost entirely around spectacles of cruelty and humiliation, and that's how you know they're desperate. They're resorting to horrific scare tactics and grotesque stunts in an effort to gin up yet another election year panic about the border. And by his own admission, Trump just pulls this stuff straight out
My ass.
This has been a closer look. The midterm elections are coming up, so to make sure that you're good to vote in this election, visit our good friends at headcount.org to check your voter registration status or to register to vote.